Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. I hope you had an incredible weekend. I hope you got to go outside and witness the solar eclipse if you were in the area. I know where I am got about 90%, so we went out there and saw that a little bit today. I hope this week is shaping up to be a good one. But we have a big show. Last weekend was a big weekend in sports. So much went on. We don't even have time to talk about all of it today. We'll spill that over a little bit into tomorrow. WrestleMania happened. We'll talk about that a little bit later, maybe. We had the first of our March Madness champions crowned yesterday at the game starting at 3, where South Carolina, the juggernaut team, took down Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes to secure the perfect season. We will talk about all of that in just a second. We're also going to break down the men's final between UCONN and Purdue. Talk about how that matchup might go, who I have winning, as well as breaking down the results of the Final Four that took place in the men's side to get to where we are today. Big coaching news out of the NCAA today as well. John Calipari leaves Kentucky. The legendary Kentucky coach, been with them forever, one of the most winningest coaches of all time with Kentucky, takes his talents to Arkansas after a couple of disappointing losses in a row. And we will close out our show talking a little bit about baseball. There was a bunch of articles that came out, a bunch of people saying, hey, the pitch clog is getting pitchers hurt. We'll take a look at if that's true or not, break down what might be the real cause of pitching injuries, the uptick in it in the last 5 years or so, at least major ones. But before we get into all of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, control what we talk about, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation. We appreciate anything that you do leave. If you leave that tip or donation, leave a message with it, it'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. It'll show for me, you, for everybody else that's watching, exactly what you had to say. We will have a little discussion about what you had to say, along with anything else that you would like to talk about. Once again, you can control what we talk about in this show. All you need to do is leave a tip or donation at gsmcpodcast.net. Once again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. We have a lot to talk about. So, what do you say we just get right into it to start? South Carolina, the Gamecocks are champions. Champions, undefeated champions. They take down Iowa on Sunday, yesterday, just about 24 hours ago. They take down Caitlin Clark and Iowa to secure their national championship. That team is stacked, and outside of them, as winning their championship, they had an incredible season. They went undefeated. They were the number one overall seed. They obviously just won the national championship. But they did it in such a dominant fashion. They had the AP Women's Coach of the Year, Dawn Staley, who is being talked about as a potential hire at Kentucky now that John Calipari is gone. It's a huge moment for their program, a program that has been dominant. It's the third time that they won the championship. Again, undefeated. It's the the fifth time. Ninth time, fifth program that this has happened for undefeated national champions. So congratulations to them. It was an incredible season for them. They've had the best team in the country for a long time. They were favorites. They were huge favorites heading into the tournament. I believe they were like minus 500 or something like that to win the whole thing. Those are huge odds, especially against the entire field. And they go and they get it done. Their path to the championship wasn't easy. They played a close game or two. Uh, they played a couple close games. They had a scare in the Sweet 16, I believe. But it was, other than that, it was a very, very stress-free run. I mean, the first round, they win by almost 60 points, 91-39. Then they win by 40 plus in the second round. A little scare in the Sweet 16 against Indiana. They only win by 4. But then they go back to domination against Oregon State. It's only a 12-point win, but you're getting into the weeds here. And then Final Four, win by almost 30 win by 19 against North Carolina State, and then they win by 12 in the championship game. They had one tight game. They just dominated the whole way through. It really was impressive to see how dominant they were. That team, it goes deep. The other team might have had Caitlin Clark, who's being talked about as the greatest college player of all time by some. Definitely the greatest women's college basketball player. But we take a look at what she's done, and really what this whole tournament has done for women's basketball, women's sports as a whole. You have so many more eyes. There were 17 million people that tuned into this championship game. Before that, the record was 12 million. They shattered records for people tuning in and watching these games. It was super impressive. It's a great step forward for women's sports as a whole. The NCAA announced over the weekend as well that due to the success of this women's tournament, they're actually going to make it equitable, like the same amount of funding going to men's and women's tournaments now, starting next season, which is huge, because of the whole story with the COVID stuff when the women got like a hastily set up gym and the men had all these super nice facilities and everything. This is a great sign for women's sports as a whole. It's a great thing when you have all these people showing up, watching women's sports, making it so it becomes a popular sport. You have it come out. It's not even just women's basketball as a whole. This is the main topic of discussion. Most of the time around this time, it's, hey, let's preview the men's. The women's is over. Let's preview the men's. It's a huge shift in perspective, and it's a welcome one. Something that I really do enjoy about the way that it's going, and hopefully it can continue. I see no reason why it won't, but I think what helped a lot is this men's tournament hasn't been the greatest. It hasn't been. The women's tournament had better storylines, better intrigue. Very, very impressed by the product out there on the court, and hopefully it continues. Hopefully they take this into the 2024 WNBA when all of these players presumably go in this draft. It's going to be a crazy draft class. And that draft is coming up in just a week now, actually. Next Monday, the draft will start. You've got Caitlin Clark. You've got Angel Reese. You've got Paige Beckers. You've got people from Stanford, people from South Carolina. It's a stacked draft class. It's going to be huge. That game, actual game itself, we'll break it down a little bit. South Carolina basically leads the whole way. Caitlin Clark had a very good game. She did. She put up 18 points in the first quarter. That's a record. And she was playing, she puts up
they gave me their best deal and my choice of point.
She puts up a whole lot of points. She puts up 30 points. Something that against almost any other team makes them win. You have 4 players in double digits. She almost put up a triple-double. Little less assists than usual, but when you're going against a team with size, Camila Cardozo puts up 15 and 17. It's the second time in the last 3 games that an opponent has put up 15-15 double-double on them, which I think is really the big difference, the size down low. It really was just a dominant run through the tournament for South Carolina. So, very, very impressed by them. They win 87-75. So, after a dominant first quarter by Iowa, the rest of the game kind of went South Carolina's way. But yeah, let me know what you guys think here in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But yeah. Anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in so far to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Coming up in our next segment, we're going to talk about the men's Final Four and the preview for UConn and Purdue, the two big 7-foot guys going at it. Someone who is at least not a head shorter than Zach Edey gets to play defense against him, and he goes in that matchup. I'm very excited to see how that goes. That's coming up right after this break on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't replaced all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. If you were just tuning in, we just finished talking about South Carolina's dominant run through the season, what it means for women's sports, for women's basketball specifically, and the future. Huge performance by them. They topped Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes to win their third national championship, just the 10th time that there has ever been a perfect season in women's college basketball history. They go undefeated to the championship. Congratulations to them. Very, very big performance by them. We're going to transition here into the men's Final Four. But before we do, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen there. If you do, we'll have a little discussion about what you want to talk about. You can control what we talk about here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. All you need to do is go to the link gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message, and you can control what we talk about. We appreciate anything you do give. Once again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. Like I was saying, though, this second segment, we're going to talk a little bit about men's college basketball. We just finished talking about the women, the incredible run, and really the huge intrigue that goes into it. It was a better tournament than the men's has been. No doubt about it. It was much more entertaining. They had closer games, better storylines around. In the men, as good of a story as NC State was, it just didn't really quite match up to the same level of competition or closeness or feel of the game that the women had, at least this year. So that's awesome to see. It's awesome to see that in something as, huge as March Madness itself, you can have games or seasons when the women are center stage, and that's really, really cool to see. Anyway, though, we take a look at the men's side of the bracket now, and we're left with UConn, the number one seed, the number one juggernaut. They rushed through the tournament again, much like South Carolina on the other side. They breezed through the tournament. It was not that tough for them to make any kind of move. So they are here dominating fashion. Not even very close in any of their games. They come off a win where they were able to handle Alabama's offense pretty solidly. They weren't able to put them away as cleanly as the they weren't able to put them away as cleanly as they were able to do with Illinois when they went on that 30-0 run. But they were absolutely able to do it, and they now get a chance to face off in the finals for their second straight. They do. Purdue, who comes off a game where NC State never really had a shot. DJ Burns was not physical enough. He wasn't making his shots. They turned the ball over way too often to really stay close. I believe Purdue led tape to tape, ticker to ticker. It wasn't a very close game, and it kind of felt like they were just being out physical, especially in the beginning of the game when NC State couldn't get a rebound to save their lives. Rebounding is such an underrated part of the game, because even when you're not having a good shooting night, if you can get down there and crash the boards, you're going to get yourself chances and you're going to be able to win that game, especially when you're winning it that handily. It's tough for the other team to come back. So Purdue takes on UConn, and really what this tournament has showed is just how dominant big guys are still in the game of college basketball. You think basketball, you think three-point shooting, you think these big skill guys on the outside, but the size is still the big killer in basketball. You see it with Zach Edey. You see it with Donovan Clingan, who's projected to be a lottery pick. 7'2", 7'4". That's going to be a fun matchup. I think UConn is still just, frankly, the better team. They have a deeper bench, better weapons all around. Purdue has a solid lineup. They have shooters, but their length isn't there. They're a little bit of a smaller team outside of Zach Edey because they don't need to be a bigger team. They got the tallest guy in the game, the back-to-back AP National Player of the Year, looking to complete the comeback after losing to a 16 seed last year. And if they do, maybe that is the secret sauce. Maybe if you're a team that's struggling historically to win a national championship, all you need to do, go lose to a 16 seed, be a 1 seed again the next season, and then you'll run the table. We saw it with Virginia. This is the furthest that Purdue has made it. The first time that they have been in the national championship in almost 40 years. Last time they did it, they lost to UCLA, I believe in the 60s. So it's been a long, long time. It's been a long, long time for Purdue, and they're finally back. I think this is a tough matchup. UConn was head and shoulders above the rest of the field when they came in, and they haven't really proved otherwise yet. Maybe Purdue, with Zach Edey's size on the inside, he can be that rim protector, and they don't have to, double and leave guys open on the outside. Maybe they can do that. It's going to be really tough. It's going to be a good game tonight. Tips off at 9:20, I believe. Championship game. UConn is favored by 6.5 points. I'm taking UConn. UConn is, like I said, you go bar for bar, maybe Purdue has the better player. They have the taller player. Zach Edey is a very interesting prospect when it comes to basketball because he's not really seriously being talked about to go that high in drafts. Now, I have seen him going in the first round now, something that before this season he was barely projected to get drafted at all. But with a draft class as weak as this one is, it's one of those things where, hey, maybe they do have these. Maybe they do have these teams, these players that can make the difference. How high can he go? That's a whole nother conversation. I've seen him mocked as high as 15, but the other side has, lottery players that are going to go top 5 most likely. But we'll see. We'll have to see about that. That's going to be another fun matchup down low. I do think that unless Zach Edey goes off and scores 40 points again, that Purdue's not going to stand much of a chance. Just because of the size, length, and shooting of UConn. If UConn was the size of... If they had all the same skill sets, but they were the size of NC State, I'd say Purdue has a pretty good shot, but they're just too big. I think UConn still is going to take this one. It might be a little closer than the rest of their games. Who knows? Maybe they'll keep it to single digits. There's a chance they'll keep it to single digits. I don't see it happening, but maybe. Purdue does have that dominant force on the inside that can help control the game. If UConn comes out a little slow shooting from the outside and Purdue is hot, again, everything kind of, when you're playing UConn, everything kind of comes down to, hey, are you a hot shooter? Is your team shooting the ball well today? If so, then you might have a chance. But if you're not shooting lights out against UConn, you're not having a chance. I mean, look at Alabama. Alabama did not have their greatest game all season. Alabama puts up 72 points. It's their worst of the tournament so far. They do shoot 45% from 3, but UConn just shoots 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and they get 10 more free throws than you. It's a little tough. And the same thing with the rebounds again. They just out-rebounded them. Didn't really stand too much of a chance when you are getting out-rebounded by almost 10, and especially on the offensive end, getting out-rebounded there. But anyway, lots of stuff to break down. UConn takes on Purdue tonight. My side, I'm on UConn. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Let me know who you have winning this game, why you have them winning it. Back-to-back champions for the first time in almost 20 years. Pretty exciting. Maybe. Or maybe we have Purdue who wins their first championship. In their first time being in this championship ability since the 60s. So, we'll have to take a look at that. Very excited to break down this game tomorrow. It's going to be the big event of the night. There was a lot of stuff going on, though. In our next segment, we're going to finish off college basketball. There's been a bunch of coaching moves, none bigger than the surprise out-of-nowhere move of John Calipari leaving his job at Kentucky Blue Bloods Blood School to go to Arkansas, a school that has had a pretty recent streak of winning, but it's not the greatest. It's an interesting move. We'll talk about the pros, the cons, the benefits of having a coach like John Calipari there, what that might bring to the Arkansas program, what Kentucky is going to do, and so much more coming up in our next segment right around the corner. But stick around. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network. Now available on YouTube, absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in for the first time, we've just finished breaking down the top story of the day, which is the men's and women's Final Four/championship game. In our first segment, we broke down South Carolina winning their third national, finishing up in basketball history to none, with program all time to do it, joining UConn, Baylor, and a couple others as well. We broke down the men's tournament as well, having the championship game taking place tonight between Purdue and UConn. You have guys like Zach Edey taking on Duncan Clingan. These are Clingan, who's supposed to be a lot of pick in the draft, and interesting talent in Zach Edey, super tall, has really stepped up from seasons past, and that's making his draft climb a little bit. We'll see how it goes in the future with that, though. UConn winning that. In this segment coming up, though, we're going to talk about coaching. Coaching in college basketball it changes all the time. You had a major coaching change take place over the weekend with Kentucky legend John Calipari, leave Kentucky after disappointing losses to the 15 seeds in the first round and move over to Arkansas, a program that historically hasn't been as good as Kentucky, but recently has gone to the Elite Eight and the Sweet 16. He's gone to Sweet 16 as that program at 3 of the last 4 years. So in recent memory, they've been pretty productive. And John Calipari is over there. We'll talk about the fallout from all of that, as well as some other coaching changes that have happened around the NCAA so far, as they've been going on for a couple weeks. We've had more coaches than usual move around, from what I can remember, at least on tournament teams. So we'll break down all the major ones there, as well as some of my personal favorite moves that have been made. But before we do, if you would like to be a bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation. It'll pop on the bottom of the screen with your message. If you do, you can control what we talk about on the show. Talk about anything your heart desires. Ask me a question. I will go ahead and answer it for you. All you need to do is go to GSMCpodcast.net and leave that tip or donation. But like I was saying, we are talking about John Calipari and his shot out of Kentucky. Now, if you remember back all the way a couple weeks ago to the very beginning of the NCAA tournament, the beginning when the big story after day one was Kentucky losing again. Kentucky loses to Oakland. Jack Golke makes 10 threes, a Herculean effort to push 14 seed Oakland over the top of the Kentucky this blue blood program with a history of success and one of the most legendary coaches on the bench. And if you remember, we did a little segment on loss, and we talked about him being kind of on the hot seat there in Kentucky. I'm not personally tapped into the feelings of Kentucky fans or the Kentucky kids. I do have a friend or two that excuse me. I do have a friend or two that goes to Kentucky, so I get a little bit in there. And the talk that I was having is, hey, is John Calipari on the hot seat? He wasn't really on the rumblings, which is kind of the feeling I got. It's been really disappointing these last couple seasons. This isn't the kind of basketball that we're used to. What's going on here? Should we start thinking about going a new direction? And it seemed a little early. If it happened again, I bet you they fired him. Oh, that did with quite a $3 million tag or penalty for firing the coach. Now you don't have to worry about that. Now you have to worry about finding a replacement for a coach that is very hard to replace. John Calipari won national titles. He is one of the most winningest coaches of all time with Kentucky. He's built some legends. And David Hall, these guys are coming in droves, and the transfer portal he's still killing it. He's getting lottery picks like he's getting lottery picks every year. Rob Dillingham is a lottery pick. He grabbed him out of the G League and put him on the pro team. He had a really good season off the bench for them. But now it goes to Arkansas. Arkansas after Eric Musselman leaves for the job in USC. So Lockton is kind of like a domino. Musselman is a great coach too. Like I said, he's taken Arkansas to the final 3 of the last 4 seasons. So nothing against him. Very good coach. He takes his talents out. Take a look though at everything that he has been doing, everything that Calipari does. He's gonna hopefully, the idea when he goes to Arkansas, and the idea that I've heard floating out there of why he left Kentucky to go to Arkansas, aside from an SEC contract, is that he's going to be able to get so much more money in like NIL thing. The guy who does the chicken nuggets, Mr. Tyson chicken nuggets guy, is given $5 million to recruiters. At least that's what's being reported. So He's out there in deep pockets in Arizona, or not Arizona, Arkansas. I apologize. Deep pockets out there, Arkansas. He's gonna be able to bring in lots of top prospects. His name value alone, John Calipari, the coach, that's gonna bring in some prospects as well. Arkansas is about to be a really good program. As far as it goes for Kentucky, there's been a lot of names thrown out there. Donovan of the NBA, a whole bunch of people from the SEC is what they're looking at. Experienced coaching, something that can turn this team quickly, because especially this the team cycle, the way it works, a lot of the guys in transport are already committed. They might decommit now if they're out of school, but outside of that, it's very it puts Kentucky in a tough position. He's not going to move too easy into that dominant. Excuse me. But there's a whole lot of coaching movements. Or other seasons, there's more, but aside from it, you have Arkansas getting a new coach. Louisville gets a new coach, Pat Kelsey. Kane was not doing the best. Michigan sends out Juwan Howard, brings in Dusty May. It's been a lot of major school movements. And again, not just these small mid-major teams that get picked apart all the time, and that's happening too. James Madison lost their coach; he went to Vanderbilt, and then they turned around and hired Morehead State's coach. So it's all over the place. All these small guys as well. Ohio State hired Jake Diebler. It's a very, very wild coaching cycle. But again, the biggest domino to fall from all of this is definitely John Calipari. John Calipari, one of the most winningest coaches of all time here. He goes to Arkansas. I expect Arkansas to bring in guys. Bronny James is out there. I expect he'll come back. Kentucky was a place that he was linked to. That's somewhere that made a lot of sense to me, especially with the way that John Calipari kind of runs his ships with transfer portals, big name guys, could be one and done guys. That's how he likes to do it. Get that big star in. Someone that he's been for a little while. Oscar Shea wasn't quite that guy. He was National Player of the National Player years always translate to the NBA. You see guys in recent memory like Luka Garza, who's practice squatting. He just got signed to the active roster team, I believe, but he's like a third-string center. And full circle there, actually, because he's in a very similar situation where I'm not sure what his future is after the season. He's not highly touted as an NBA prospect. Not every college basketball player is. They play two different sports, But coaching plays a big part in all of this. When you have a great coach, it really helps step up your players. Arkansas getting a huge one. Most of the can't to them, and then they end up even really on the market to begin with. John Calipari, they lulled him out of there. It's going to be huge for Arkansas, for that program, for everything surrounding it. So see what he does out there in the SEC. SEC getting a whole bunch of coaches, a whole bunch of talent. They're really trying to step up and continue to that basketball conference. They sent Alabama to the Final Four. Why not dominate it too, right? So SEC's making that push to topple the rest of the conferences. We'll see. Anyway, in our fourth and final segment coming up, we are going to transition out of college basketball, transition into the MLB. The story that I think is very interesting, before we talk about the other more evergreen stuff, is the story about the increase in pitching. We saw a couple major pitchers go down over with long-term injuries. Spencer Strider, Shane Bieber, a couple of other guys as well. Big names go down for the season. We'll talk about some reasons people are giving, what the actual reasons, all that and more coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network. Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back, everybody, to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've just talked a lot about college basketball. We talked about the women's final game. South Carolina takes home their third championship, a huge win for them and the program. They finished a perfect season. Just the 10th time in history that has happened, the 5th program in history to do it. Congratulations to them. That team was absolutely dominant. The men's Final Four happened over the weekend. We talked about that. Alabama did not have enough firepower to keep up with UConn, and DJ Burns did not do enough to outduel Purdue and Zach Edey, as the matchup between UConn and Purdue is set for tonight. We'll talk about we talked about that matchup as well. I have UConn winning it, and then we talked about coaching changes. The big one, John Calipari being moving out of Kentucky to Arkansas, what that means for the future of Kentucky, the future of Arkansas basketball, and how and why that even happened as well. We talked about all of that, so go check that out earlier. In this segment, we're going to talk about baseball. The big story coming out of this weekend is pitcher injuries. There were, in the span of 48 hours, 3 major pitching injuries to major players that might have won the Cy Young this season, the way that they were pitching, the way they're projected to pitch, and it sucks to see. But there's been a huge uptick in pitching injuries, catastrophic pitching injuries at that. So all of that and more, but before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show, you already are. All you do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a donation with a message in it. It'll pop up at the bottom of the screen. We'll have a little discussion about what you had to say. You control what we talk about here in the show. You have a burning question, comment, anything. Go to podcast.net, make a donation with it. We'll have a discussion about what you say. Anything you do give, and you guys for listening. But like I was saying, this final segment, we're going to talk about the concerning uptick over pitching injuries. And it's not just these minor injuries. You have injuries happen all the time to pitchers because it's a violent motion when you're pitching baseball. It's not like just toss the ball. You are contorting your body, getting all spin on it can, and you're throwing it as hard as you possibly can. Sometimes over 100 times a day. You pitch 100 times as hard as possible for starters, especially. And you do that twice a week. Every 5 days. It takes a toll on your arm. It really does. It's not great. There's stories of pitchers not being able to use their arm anymore. Most recent one that comes to mind is Steven Strasburg, who retired officially yesterday. 2019 World Series MVP, he can't even really use his arm anymore because of how much he messed it up. And that's what the big attention that's being put on this is because the MLBPA put out a statement after 2020 AL Cy Young winner, and Cy candidate this year, Spencer Strider, one of the best young pitchers in the game, as well as incredible reliever Yuri Perez, young pitcher Yuri Perez. They all have huge potential injuries. I know Yuri Perez and JB are both getting Tommy John. Spencer Strider's injury does not look too good. He got an MRI on arm. But it's not just them. That's just what happened this weekend. 3 huge players getting injured. The MLBPA saying the pitch clock. And they're saying, hey, these players are maybe faster and hurt them. It's not these guys. We already met Steven Strasburg, but Shohei Ohtani is not hitting all season. Jake Contra, Robbie Ray, all these guys are hurt right now. Shane McClanahan, Gio, Garrett Cole is out. Huge names that are being. It sucks because it is the most essential part to a baseball game. If you don't have a pitcher, you're not going to win that game because it's pitch games. You throw a strike, you're just going to home a million runs. You can't throw the ball hard enough where a batter's not going to hit it. You're in trouble. They're going to put up a million runs on you, hit a million home runs, so forth. Pitching is so important. But there has been a concerning uptick in injuries. Question from Kirito MVP 11: Why does Warriors fan try and chase Klay Thompson out of town? We'll talk about that soon, but real briefly, he just hasn't been playing his best. Ever since his injury, he hasn't been the same. So we'll cover the Warriors and Klay Thompson actually a little bit tomorrow, but that has not been very good this season. We're getting back to pitcher injuries. Like we said, there's been these huge injuries, and the MLBPA comes out a couple days ago over the weekend and says the pitch clock is causing it. The pitch clock is the reason we want the pitch clock banned. The NBA is for this. The MLB comes out and says, no, we're not. It's not the pitch clock. We've done studies, and it shows that the pitch clock is not the reason because pitchers are throwing harder. You have pitchers now touching 105 miles an hour. I don't know if this is true, but I remember reading something a little while ago saying, hey, the fastest peak human being, no steroids or anything, theoretically, we think the fastest one can throw a baseball accurately is 110. We are getting there. There's a reach of theoretically possible for human beings. These guys are coming out there and they're throwing 100. Like I said, 90 times a game. They're throwing this ball super hard with these new spin rates and everything. They're getting this new technology. It's all on their arm. Another reason why we see less and less pitchers be that 8-inning, 7-inning every single day, because you can't throw hard and have your arm last that long. Now, there's always exceptions to the rule. We still have Max Scherzer throwing. We still have Justin Verlander. Those guys have both hurt. There's always exceptions to rules, but in general, it's a little concerning, and MLB needs to fear this because it's not the pitch clock. They've done studies. This wasn't something they pulled out of nowhere. Having studied because it's a concern that upticks in pitching injuries are happening, especially to stars, because, like I said, you can't just throw a scrub out to a pitcher. You might be able to hide someone at second base. It's going to be fun for your baseball team if you're throwing a scrub out there at second base, but you're going to be able to get away with it a lot easier if you throw someone that's not at base. But if you throw someone that's at base, it's obvious, He gets teed off on, or you can't throw a strike, and it's a disaster. Baseball needs, and they've got plenty of pitchers, right? It's not getting the best, and it sucks. You want the best. You want Lucas Giolito out there. You want Shohei Ohtani pitching. That's what you want. You want these big mega stars out there pitching, but they're not because of injuries. Injuries happen. Injuries don't happen. You get the best players and the best every single night. But we're human. We're prone to breaking. We're prone to injuries. That's just part of what makes sport so exciting. You never know when it's gonna end, and it's a sad thing about sports, but it's real life, It's not like no one ever gets hurt and respawn like a video game. It's not like that. Anything can happen at a time. You just have to appreciate the greatness that you see, because it's not going to last forever. Injuries, age, whatever, retirement, anything. They're going to figure out how to reduce injuries. It's tough. Like I said, these players are throwing consistently hard. And it might just be something that's down to you to have 6 starter on your team so that you only start once a week instead of once every 5 days. An extra rest day is going to help these guys. There's teams that you just have to try things, and sometimes it won't work, sometimes it will. But there's different ways to build your lineup. Pitching injuries are going to continue to happen. What I think it is just they're throwing it harder. And when you throw something, when you put more effort into something, you're likely to get hurt. Because, easy on it. If something's going to go, it's going to go when you are overextending it, when you're overdoing it. And if you're just kind of going easy, you're never going to overdo it. But you have to in these sports like baseball. I know it doesn't seem like that much effort, but especially for pitchers, it's so hard to throw something 100 miles an hour over and over and over again. And keep doing it. It's super impressive. It really is. But anyway, there's no one good way to fix this. I think the best way to do it, you have to watch them, and unfortunately the thing with elbow injuries, it's not like a bruise where you can see it. It's not really something that you feel coming. It just happens sometimes. And I don't think, because most of these injuries were happening at a more alarming rate before the pitch clock anyway. There's not one good solution for it. There's no solution for injuries. And it is definitely a problem. And maybe MLP is just going to have to change its rotation. The NFL backup emergency quarterbacks. Maybe MLB has to do something like you designate someone not officially on the roster, but it just happens. And they have a minor, so it's not quite the same. They have these pitchers ready to go, but it's an interesting situation. Something to keep monitoring. It is a concern. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning to this episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. We'll be back here same time, same place tomorrow. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.